I like making big, ridiculously impractical cosplays, and I like going to conventions where they don't usually work well. These two just don't mix. Or do they? Hello, I'm Miss Twisted, you can call me Charlotte. I do crafting, cosplay, and other weird and whimsical stuff. And today I am making Speaker of God from Hazbin Hotel, which is a character that combines two of my favorite things, owls and multi-winged, biblically accurate Asterix angels. And of course, I am a big Hazbin Hotel fan. The art style speaks to my inner teenage emo self. The songs are freaking bangers and it's full of emotion, and the plot is also there. But my challenge here is making this thing disassemblable, portable, durable enough to survive checked-in luggage on a flight. And kind of modular, you know? Like, I can remove parts of it and still have it very wearable and recognizable so that, like, I can wear it in different ways to account for the crowds at conventions. So I'm not hitting anyone with my wings or hoop skirt, and I'm more comfortable in general. Basically, I want to have my cake and eat it too. Now, why bother, you may ask? Why go through all this trouble for this cosplay? Well, I wanted something new and big to debut at AVCon. This is a big convention in South Australia, run by fans, for fans, not for profit. It has been going for about 20 years. Despite AVCon's accolades, Despite AVCon's accolades, I've never managed to make it before, but this year I've been invited as a guest and a judge, which is kind of a big deal, because for the first time, AVCon is hosting the Australian preliminary round of the International Cosplay League, one of the major international cosplay competitions, and Australia doesn't always get access to these kind of international competitions. So it feels kind of important to me and hopefully for the whole Australian cosplay scene. So this video is technically sponsored by AVCon because, as well as my judging duties, I really wanted to showcase some of the convention and the competition to kind of give an insight into how competitions might work for those uninitiated. This video is still mostly crafting the cosplay because, let's be honest, I'm no vlogger. I can't multitask well enough for most of that. But I hope you will still stick around to see what AVCon has in store for us, get a glimpse into the competition, and of course, see if I can achieve my idea of a impractical cosplay made more practical. Also, did I mention, as per usual, I've given myself 2 months to do this, which is a tight turnaround for a costume with so much. Alright, starting with the skirts, and looking at the reference, I think this is gonna have to be 3 skirts. We definitely need a hoop skirt or petticoat to hold all of this up. There is a big old bunch of feathers, and then of course the more deep orangey yellow layer. The feathers kind of have to be fabric. I thought about doing EVA foam, but they are going to be constantly brushing against the floor, being crushed as I sit on them, and like constantly brushing up against other people. They've got to be able to take a beating and bend back into place. So lightweight, and I am going to need a lot of fabric, so the cheapest poplin I can find. I've made a bunch of fabric feathers like this before for my Stella cosplay, which are basically 2 pieces of feathers sewn together, turn it inside out so it's like bag lined, and sew down the edge so you have this nice, clean, crisp feather. That's a good starting point, but these ones do like stick up and out like this, so I need like some elements to stiffen it and like hold that shape. So I did a couple of experiments. Experiment number 1 was this one, which worked pretty well. It's basically the same thing, 2 pieces of fabric sandwiched together, sewn together at the edges. In between those two, there is a layer of heat and bond, which is like a double-sided iron-on adhesive so that these 2 sides are really like fused together, and right through the middle of them is essentially an armature wire, which is allowing it to hold that curvy shape. So this worked okay. Heat and bond is really expensive though, and I realized I would have to do like 30 different feathers with this, and I don't know if I want to spend that. This is already not going to be a cheap costume just because there are so many layers to it, so I'm just trying to cut corners where I can. Experiment 2 was essentially the same thing, but using like a really cheap iron-on interfacing. So it's like basically fusing to one side to make it really strong and hold that nice crisp shape. God damn, you guys, sometimes the words just don't want a word. Anyway, the problem I'm finding with this one is that heat has to be exactly right on the iron. Otherwise you get this kind of like weird, like melting, shriveling thing happening right through here where the whole thing just kind of and then the feather's ruined. But this is still usable. You just have to find that happy medium spot of having the iron not too hot that it's gonna shrivel up like this, but just hot enough to activate that glue to fuse that webbing stuff to the fabric. I know I'm gonna need a ton of feathers for this, so I have cut out about 40 strips of this poplin that I'm going to iron down onto 1/2 of each strip, some of this iron-on stabilizer. Fold that strip in half, right sides together, stabilizer side on the outside, doing a little sketch of the feather point just to help guide me as I sew, and sew them together into that feather shape down either side. I cut off the excess fabric, turn the whole thing inside out for all 40 feathers. Yes, this took me ages. Oh, also forgot to mention, but I'm doing some short and longer ones because a lot of them aren't really going to be showing except right at the bottom, so the less fabric I have to use up, the better. Now, each of these are getting like a top stitch along the side to crisp up those edges and right down the center. So with these feathers, I've still got an opening at the top that I can shove some armature wire. Essentially, if you cut like a long piece like this, it's nice and easy to thread into this. So that wire is all the way to the end, and the reason I've done this one stitch line first is because I can essentially push that wire up against this stitch line and then do another stitch line right along here with the zipper foot to get nice and close. And that is gonna like lock that wire in place right where it needs to be in the center of that feather. And of course, I don't need the wire up the whole feather, just the end part where it needs to hold that curve. All right, petticoat on a mannequin, and I've got about 30 of these feathers ready to go. Also, welcome to my other workshop space. I think that this one is like my little dungeon room because it's cold and dark down here. It's essentially like a basement room. But what it is good for is having a lot of space to set up a mannequin with a giant hoop skirt that I just don't have in the other room. Anywho, my goal here is just to start like pinning this to the hoop skirt. I just kind of want to check to make sure 30 feathers is enough, because I'm kind of getting sick of sewing these things. So as I started pinning these, I did have to go back and sew together a couple more feathers, and I'd completely forgotten the scrolls that make up her tail feathers, so we gotta do those. Forgive me for breezing over these, but it was essentially one big long rectangle of calico with some horsehair braids sewn in for structure, which I'm trying to place along the length of the scroll so that when it's curled up, you won't really see these because they'll be essentially facing the floor. Spoiler alert, the scrolls kind of failed. They got crushed and crumpled just way too easily, and I don't know, I think there's a better way to do these for sure. Anywho, shoving some more armature wire down the rolled hem in each side of the scroll, that's just going to help it hold that spirally shape. Now, all my scrolls and feathers are done and fully covering the bottom of that skirt. Before I sew anything together, everything's getting airbrushed like along the edges with this sort of like orangey gold color that I really like. And guys, I have a cursed relationship with airbrushes. They look so good, but something that I'm doing just means that they are constantly clogging no matter how many times I troubleshoot or clean. But you know what? I just keep cleaning and troubleshooting and spraying, and then cleaning and troubleshooting and spraying, and we'll eventually get to 40, actually I think it was 35 in the end, finished airbrushed feathers ready to sew onto a skirt. I have got this very cheap and cheerful cotton poplin, which I have cut a hole right through the middle of. That is going to form a very basic and lazy circle skirt that is going to basically just give me a nice base that I can pin all of those feathers to. And honestly guys, this is not looking half bad. Ignore the fact that I experimented with spraying the bottom of the petticoat orange, but I'm going to sew these directly to that poplin layer and see how we're looking. And that was easier said than done. There's just like so much fabric and feathers on this table to try and wrangle together and make sure you're not like accidentally sewing the wrong two bits of fabric together. As well as sewing each feather in place, I'm sewing each feather to each other based on how I pinned it while it was on the mannequin, just to make sure that it kind of like covers the petticoat and doesn't leave too many weird gaps. None of you are allowed to judge me for doing half this video in my dressing gown. We're entering the middle of winter and this is like my dark, cold dungeon room. Anyway, this was a pain in the butt to sew. God, these things are such a pain in the butt. Stupid scrolls. Okay, so I'm looking at this on the mannequin and I'm seeing all of this warping here. These are not sitting flat at all. And I think I'm going to literally like undo all this stitching that joins the two. I think it's okay if these like feathers stay like loose and individual in how they sit, because I don't want this warping going on here. So I'm gonna undo all of that work I just did. But my hope is that once I get some sort of layer under this, it's gonna be okay. It just looks kind of weird, alright? Sometimes cosplaying from a highly stylized cartoon show has its problems. The main one being that they don't have to like obey the laws of physics. They can have their characters look however they want in whichever weird way they want. And I'm kind of learning the hard way how annoying that is to translate to a real design. Okay, I think I'm gonna just worry about straightening out the feathers later. I'm gonna get the top layer of the dress on and looking nice. And once that's done, I can work out if I need to have some sort of second layer to cover the between of the feathers. God damn, this is a pain in the butt. Hey, speaking about things not working out, guess what happened to this second layer you're watching me make right now? I am just gonna leave some of this footage in just so you can see and appreciate the work that I did before I decided I didn't like how it looked and remade the entire top layer of the skirt. Oh yeah, I also decided I was not happy with these gaps between the feathers, so I made more feathers and sewed them down between those feathers. Back to my top layer, I just remade this as essentially one big circle skirt of a much stiffer orangey gold fabric. I went back to the circle skirt so it would have a fair bit of body sitting under the other layer rather than just sitting like flaccid and flush against the bottom skirt. Sorry, not sorry for using the word flaccid in this context. Anyway, the whole bottom zigzag edge here got all hemmed up and we are done. Okay, moving on up to the top half, and in the reference image, the speaker's basically got like one long-sleeved, long-sleeve, form-fitted top with a love heart on the chest, right? Yeah, I'm not going to do that. As we've talked about, I want this to be modular, so I kind of want the sleeves to be separate from the top, to be separate to the top, which is going to hide some of the straps that will eventually be holding up the wings. So we're doing it in pieces, which will also add a bit more detail. And the other reason is because I'm really not good at doing like precision, form-fitted, perfect sewing, so I'm not going to. This build is challenging enough as it is, and this is not a competition piece. I don't need it to be accurate. I just want it to look the way I want it to look, so that's what we're doing. Starting with the sleeves, and you guys know at this point I'm not one for patterns, so I'm just gonna trace an existing jacket and like extend out the sleeve at the bottom for that trumpet sleeve shape. Cutting out that shape on a light piece of this cotton folded over, and I'm gonna copy the rest of this jacket shape as well. You're not really going to see anything apart from the sleeves, but you still need like a conduit for the sleeves. A vessel, if you will. It sounds so freaking weird. Anywho, it's why this entire bit is not very neat at all and just like basically just enough to keep it on my shoulders. And guys, I swear that I did do a mock-up attaching the sleeves to this little slapped together vest section. I just apparently didn't film that bit. Look, honestly, at this time, I was already panicking a little bit based on how long the skirt took me. So, I mean, I do this to myself every time. I underestimate how long projects will take. I need to get better at this, guys. This is ridiculous. Anywho, for most of the top, I've got this really nice slubbed silk dupion. I don't love it being the sort of beigey gold that it is, so it is getting chucked in a pot with some dye. I actually only dyed about half of it just because I wanted color variation and then realized later that was stupid. But again, the panicking and the time thing, you guys know how it goes, right? So each sleeve is one piece of cotton, one piece of the silk dupion, both sewn along this bottom edge here. With that done, I am turning my inside lining inside out so that the like raw edge is inside that sleeve, and then that is going inside the outer layer of the sleeve that has that raw edge on the outside. Yeah, I know it is confusing. I have to pin this in place and double check it every time to make sure I've got them all the right way. And once I'm 100% sure I've got everything round the right way, I'm sewing along that cuff line and then like pulling the lining through to turn the dupion layer inside out and then poking that lining back in to make sure that essentially all of the raw edges are going to be encased within the lining in between the two sections. God, I hope that makes sense. Yes, sleeves and linings are confusing. Anywho, I'm going to press this down with the iron just to make that edge nice and crisp before I do a little bit of top stitching along here. And quite frankly guys, I think this is the neatest stitching that I do on any of this outfit. I've also just done a quick stitch on the top here to hold those two layers together until it gets attached to this little vest thing. Okay, sleeves are done, backpack base ready to go. Put a pin in the backpack base thing, I'm going to come back to it in a little bit. And I cannot work on the corset or the wings for a while because there's a bunch of supplies that are still on their way to me. Postage times in Australia are astronomical. That's what we get for being an isolated giant island. So what I can do right now is work on the mantle around the shoulders, and for that I have essentially just a piece that I kind of guesstimated that I've cut out of. It's like a circle skirt, but it goes over your shoulders, you know? And waist not, whatnot, I just used this piece as like my lining layer and sewed it directly to the silk dupion layer. With this bag lined and pressed down nice and flat, it's looking pretty damn nice. Alright folks, before we get started, please take a moment to admire my amazing jumper. This was $5 at an op shop. I love it. Anyway, this thing is covered in cling wrap at the neck because we are doing a duct tape pattern. Except on this channel, I use fragile tape because I bought too much of it years ago and have been trying to use it up ever since. This one is actually German fragile tape gifted to me at Animuk in Munich. But unless you also accidentally bought a bunch of tape in bulk, I would use regular duct tape just because it's far easier to see your markings when you start to draw on this stuff. So I'm doing a duct tape pattern here to essentially get like the shape of a really high collar that covers your whole neck. A lot of the time I will do a duct tape pattern of the thing against my actual body, not this time when it involves scissors against my actual neck. Okay, not a terrible starting point, but there's definitely some tweaks I need to do, like it's not quite the right shape. A bunch of trial and error later and I was happy with my pattern pieces. I did forget to label some of my pieces as I was cutting them out, so I had to review my own footage back to work out which pattern piece goes in the particular place in the collar. I think I managed to like trial and error my way to like a shape that works. I feel like I definitely did this the hard way round. I'm sure there's probably a pattern that exists out there that I could have just gone straight to. Okay, sitting kind of like that, and then this is gonna sit right on top like this. And it is giving a little Road to El Dorado, but like, it's giving godlike, and that's kind of the theme, right? I'm going to sew down this part, but first I just glued it straight on over the top to make sure I got the positioning right. For the chest love heart, I drew a heart on a piece of paper, made sure it was the right size, standard stuff. And guess what? It is more bag lining as I sew a piece of satin to a stiffer fabric to make this love heart. And yeah, it's a weird shaped heart right here, but once I start lining it with these pointed feathers around it, it's gonna be a really nice shape. And all of these little paper pieces are going to be fabric feathers. I am not bag lining these, in fact. I am just doing like a straight folded over sort of hem. I chose this method to try and keep the top part sitting on my chest as lightweight as possible. But guys, it's really hard to wrangle silk dupion into a folded hem on a curved shape. I don't think a single feather here had a fully smooth curve to it, but hey, it's just organic shapes, right? A stitch along each of those hems to hold it in place and a good press, and we've got some pretty decent looking feathers. And we are just going to layer these up bit by bit and just make sure I'm 100% happy with placement before I glue and sew these down. So this is a backpack. I have left the straps, I have cut off the actual bag bit and just left the back panel, and I have bolted a wood chip placemat, I guess, to the back of it. I've also created these little tubes of some silk dupion to basically go over the straps, so it kind of disguises them and means it'll blend in with the rest of the sleeves and the mantle thing. That is essentially the base harness for the wings, and it's like the fourth one that I've made like this. Actually the fifth one if you count the one that I angry crafted for my husk wings. I had to switch to like a heavy duty version of this one because those wings were just so damn big. There is probably better ways to do this, but this works. Everything's accessible and easy to get hold of. So I'm sticking with it. And I'm not going to do a step-by-step instruction for this one, guys, because I have made so many wing videos before. Feel free to go check them out for some inspiration and some variations on how to do this. What I will put here is a quick safety briefing because I want to make sure you guys are looking after yourselves if you want to try anything like this for yourself. Pay attention, class. This is a safety briefing, not a sponsored section. I need your listening ears for 30 seconds, and if you're good, you'll get a sticker at the end. Your safety and health is your responsibility. Always research the glues, paint, and materials you're using. Determine if you need ventilated space, respirators, safety goggles, gloves, or aprons. If in doubt, read your instructions, read your manuals. Your health and safety should always be a priority over a project, regardless of what dumb or dangerous stuff you see other people doing. That includes me. I have done dumb and dangerous stuff in the past, and I probably will do again. Very good listening, class. Here is your sticker. It is a round chicken that I got from a convention. You're welcome. Hey, welcome back to my kitchen floor. It just seems to be the best way to lay out things nice and flat. I'm just gonna kind of like draw on the foam and get a rough idea of what shape I want the wings to be. I stole one of my wings from my biblically accurate angel to trace over for my first shape, and this foam stuff that I'm using is polycell packing foam. And guys, I'm sorry to say, but I am going to skip past explanations about how I'm doing the frame itself, just because I've done this at like 3 different points in different videos. You're welcome to go watch those for more info. For now, I'm just going to skip straight forward to the feathers, which are all this 3mm packing foam. Just to make them a little bit thicker, they'll hold their shape a little bit better. And I know last time I did this with an 8-winged angel, I used like 1,000 feathers. So I am expecting, even for 6 wings, to use up a fair bit. I'm hoping that I don't need like quite that many because goddamn, it takes so long to cut these all out. And once I've got all my rectangular strips, they're all getting cut into this pointy shape with a couple little notches just to sell that feathery texture. Well, good morning, my loves. I stayed up way past my bedtime cutting out feathers. I think I've got around 600 feathers here total. I have all of these big ones at the end here, and then these ones just all stacked up as much as possible, plus a couple more in this box here. So yeah. Luckily for me, the cosplay gods have blessed this decision because I have a relatively warm day for the middle of Melbourne winter. It is sunny with a light breeze. It is the perfect day for painting 600 feathers outside. Okay, so here's my plan. I want to try and like get a really good rhythm going to get through these as fast as possible because there are 600 of them. I have box number 1 down here. I've got white plaster dip, and yes, I know I'm painting the white feathers white. I have learned from experience that like having a plaster dip primer on there is kind of the best way to get other paints to stick to it. So we're gonna pick up a feather, spray, turn it around, spray, put it on the bucket on the other side. Side note, I usually have a more dedicated space for spraying, but right now we've had like a bunch of water damage and flooding and stuff like that in the house. So like there's a bunch of stuff that was in one room that's now in a different room. And oh my goodness, we've got king parrots. Guys, we got king parrots. Okay, hang on. I take it back. I think they're like juvenile crimson rosellas. Hello, guys. Okay, I've lost my train of thought. Basically, my whole house is a bit of a hot mess right now. This is the space I'm working with. It'll still get the job done. Now, of course, I don't want them to actually dry in that little box, otherwise they'll stick to each other. So once I've got a bunch done, I'm just hanging these up on my washing line. And then ready for round 2. And I think I did like 6 or 7 round, no, not 6 or 7. No, I take it back. Let's just say I did many rounds of this, okay? So all this plaster dipping the edges is to serve as a primer for the next layer here because I want to like edge all of these feathers in a little bit of gold just to give it, I guess, some dimension. You'll see me change my mind later and paint the whole thing with the gold anyway. The next day, all of those feathers are dry. I'm using the shape that I traced out before and just like laying these feathers down to start my wings. I want to get 100% happy with the position of all of these before I start gluing these down. And once again, guys, if you're trying something like this for yourself, respirator on, windows open, there is like toxic fumes coming out, but I have found that hot glue is seriously like the best way to attach polycell packing foam to each other. I don't know why. but I do know it is toxic as heck, so please protect yourself if you're trying anything like this for yourself. With one side done, I'm flipping this over, cutting off the excess, do the whole thing all over again for the backside. Now let's not forget, these big, ridiculous, delicate wings need to be portable, so I want to make it so that this frame is collapsible and you can take the wings off the frame entirely, which is why I've got these little Velcro strips that I'm going to try and like put onto the wing that holds these rods in place so they can be removed. The Velcro is sewn onto strips of fabric and the strips of fabric are glued onto the wings, couple of tacking stitches through the foam too because I'm not 100% sure I trust the glue. And well, let's put the frames in and see if this works. Okay, Velcro attached, frame in, moment of truth.
Yes.
Well, all right, there's some great like sway and bounce happening, but a little too much because this bit here is where all the buckling is happening. This needs reinforcement. This should be sitting like that, right? So, damn it. Okay, plan B, I've got a PVC pipe that goes up the wing a little further, so a little bit more support, and I've just like put together this kind of cool way to collapse the wing so I can have the frame in several pieces as well, because they kind of slot together, you know? Weirdly enough, I think the Velcro adds a bit of weight, so I'm actually gluing in the top and bottom half of this wing and just like Velcroing in that middle part because I know that that middle part is now disassemblable so I can take it out of the wing entirely. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. All right, I think we managed to fix it. It seems to be still flowing nicely. And it is bouncing back into shape. There is like minimal, tiny little bit of warping through the middle, not anything noticeable. And if anything, it's just gonna like hold a nice shape from this angle. So I think we're good. After a little test drive of everything so far outside, I don't love how stark white those wings are. I do love how all I've done is tie the bottom wings with some fishing line to my arms and they move so nicely already. So all my wings are getting a light dusting of gold and these bottom wings do need a little bit of support, just not a full frame. So I've got these nice thin fiberglass rods that are super lightweight and I am masking taping these in. I don't know why, but I've discovered masking tape sticks quite well to this foam, so let's do it. Now all of these wings do need like something to cover up the top. And this is actually like post making a bunch of stuff, so I'm doing a little bit of a time skip thing. But I had so much left over from the skirts and the top that I'm just using all of my scrap fabric to make a bunch of fabric feathers. My hope is that it'll kind of help tie the wings into the rest of the outfit, if that makes sense, you know? The last thing with the wings was to cover the very top line of each wing, which also covers the back where that frame sits. And for that, I've got this stuff, which is like a really cheap, really basic, like polyester gold satin. And when I say cheap, I mean it. I got it from a place called Resource Rescue, and like fellow Melbourneites, if you guys haven't been there, go there because it's basically you turn up, it is a warehouse full of just bits and bobs. You grab like essentially a garbage bag and anything that you can stuff in there in that place, you can take away for 30 bucks. So just like fill up a bag. And that's how I got just like an absolutely ungodly amount of this satin. And synthetic fibers will kind of like curl up and singe if you just like lightly crisp up the edge with a flame. And that basically means it's not going to fray. You also get like a little bit of like curling in the fabric, so it creates some interesting like warpy shapes. Obviously don't do this unless you are outside with a respirator or at least some windows open because you are essentially burning plastic, right? I should have been wearing a respirator for that. Fun fact, when I was learning to sew, I just hated doing hems. I didn't know how to do them. I was entirely self-taught. So pretty much every single thing I ever made had like a jagged edge so that I could just singe it and have done with it. No hemming ever seen. So it served as a quick and easy method to just like line the tops of each of these wings. And quite frankly, I needed quick and easy because at this stage I was already panicking about how much time I had left to finish this thing. And while I've got these, it is literally just fishing line that allowed those to float in that test drive. Like it's kind of hard to see even in camera, but you can see the occasional shine there. That is literally just a piece of fishing line tied to here, another piece to here. That's all there was to it. So at this point, I was still waiting on the corsetry supplies, and I think there was just less than 2 weeks before the convention at this point, so I was getting real nervous. But nothing I can do about it, so I just moved on to the head. And the speaker's got a lot going on up here. So she's got like this massive big mane of hair, some maybe feathers here, like a big old halo, a bunch of like owly stuff, and those massive eyelashes, and I don't know if they're like hair or ears or feathers, but something going on at the sides of the face. My aim here is wearable, portable, practical, right? So I'm gonna scale a bunch of this down and make sure that it can still like sit on my head, but I'm gonna just try and at least take off all of the visible elements, you know? Oh, and guess what also hadn't arrived yet? The wig! So I'm fine, absolutely fine, not panicking at all. I started on the ears and the halo. So I kind of know what I want to do for the ears already. I've got their shape of craft foam. I'm going to sew some gold velvet and some fleece together along basically the bottom edge here. Glue that foam down to that fleece before I turn the whole thing inside out, and it's not fully bag lined, so it wasn't too hard to just kind of like flip this so that those bits are inside. And my reasoning here is I don't have to fully bag line this one because this velvet doesn't really need to be hemmed, and also it's a little bit stretchy, so if I pull it from one side and kind of wrap it around the top, it kind of creates like a nice curl that will then like stick down over that top edge. And I'm gonna glue and do a couple of tacking stitches to like fold this bottom section over. It's starting to look more like an ear now. I made a total of 6, glued and hand stitched these ones together and painted them up, starting by trying to do like a brush on with like an alcohol ink, and then admitted defeat and went back to the airbrush. I can't get away from it, it just gives such a nice finish. For the halo, it was a 3D model I put together in Fusion 360 after the absolute nightmare that was making some organic spiral horns in Fusion 360 for my Fern cosplay. This was a dream by comparison. Okay, halo is looking pretty good. I have done the most basic of sanding because I hate sanding so much, and so whatever I've done so far is gonna have to do. This seems to sit like almost entirely by itself, which is a damn miracle, all things considered. So now it's time to prime it, and for that I have a mannequin head that is absolutely terrifying. As you can see, it has already been sacrificed to the spray painting gods. I got a little hole in the bottom of this one that I'm hoping I can put some little chopsticks in and then use that to secure it to the mannequin. I'm gonna need bigger chopsticks. I have some of those in here somewhere. Haha, I knew I had some. I mean, I could just do my priming layers flat, but this way I can kind of do the back and front at the same time, and I'm impatient, so any time that I can save, I will take it. Please disregard the terrible lighting here. At this stage in the project, I was working overtime well into the evening hours to get this done. 3 rounds of priming and sanding later, it is time for like a white base coat and then a gold. Okay, wig-wise, this is what we're working with. It's always a gamble when you buy wigs online. In this case, I kind of lost the gamble a little bit. The quality of the hair is not too bad, but like it's extremely thin, and like it's that really cheap quality, like what's it called, hair netting thing. But at the very least, it's not too tight on my head, and I think with a bunch of crimping and some extra wefts put in there and all that jazz, we can make it work. Wig styling is like one of my least favorite parts of cosplay, along with sanding, I guess, so really anything that involves patience, but both of those are unavoidable if you want it to look good and polished, so I'm just gonna put up with it and hate my life for a minute. So it's crimping, crimping, brush it out, crimping. Guys, I hate this so much. If I could afford to, I would pay someone else to style all of my wigs. I do have some slightly chunky, dodgy homemade wefts that I'm just like putting in some areas just to bulk out this wig a little bit more, you know? I'm reverting to feral crafting methods for this one because I am gluing that halo onto some foam and gluing that onto the wig directly because, look, as long as it gets the job done, at this point, I'm happy. Now, all these feathers I'm going to start to glue in, I don't think these were necessary. I kind of just wanted to. It's almost like an ode to all the feathered headpieces I used to make, and of course, my other favorite owl. I think it also gives it a bit of cool texture and bulks it out a bit. But let's be honest, this was mostly personal preference. Some last little touches with this gold lame and a couple of extra little white feathers to mimic those, I don't know, markings she's got on her hair. And I think we're good to go here. Okay, I want to try something a little out there here. You guys might have seen some cosplayers where they kind of put like a mesh over their eyes and paint over that. It gives like a really surreal kind of uncanny effect. I want to try something similar for the speaker. And from what I can tell, they start with this stuff, which is like a bridal tulle or a stretch tulle. It's tulle, but not like the really stiff, scratchy netting tulle. Little bit of hairspray on it, which I guess just like helps it hold its shape and body so you can work with it a bit easier. So most of the examples I've seen are painting over this in like blues and other colors. I don't think this alone is going to work considering I want like pure white eyes. But maybe doubling it up is just opaque enough to get that effect and me still be able to see out of it. So I'm going to try that. Little bit of prosade on the edge here. I reckon spirit gum or eyelash glue probably works too. Okay, tried to glue it just under my eyebrow and give it a little bit of a curve like this as I'm sticking it down so that it's not hitting my eyelashes. Trying to get some foundation around the edges. Oh, guys, you better trust the process with me on this one. I am not liking how it's looking so far. All right, what's going to make or break this is those bigger defining elements. So I'm going to get some eyeliner going. Side note, I pre-prepared some eyelashes, which were literally just bits of black cardstock cut out into those like big swirly shapes and kind of all glued together. Those, along with some fake eyelashes, I think are going to do the job here. Little bit of prosade on the back of that, letting that get nice and translucent, and then we're going to see how this goes. Come on, stick. Damn it. Eyelash. I think the main thing that would help is if somehow the tulle in the middle was lighter. I wonder if I can actually apply any white makeup to it, whether that will help. That did help. This looks, I mean, like, I'm gonna try and clear it up a little bit, but it looks pretty damn good. Round 2 was with like the full hair and makeup all tried on together, and it was way better. Like, I think I just really knew what I was doing this time round. And thank God, because I really needed a win on this project. By this time, my corsetry supplies had finally arrived, the busk and the boning, and I have made an entire corset like from scratch properly in a previous video, so feel free to go watch that if you're keen. I will put the link down below. For this time round, I am just going to show you guys the bits that I enjoyed. Finding my old pattern pieces, grommet pressing, and lacing. Yeah, look, I don't love making corsets. I just love what they can do. Like, they're going to support all of those skirts. And I do love using my grommet press so much. And while I've got the corset in front of me, right at the back where the eyelets are, I have these quick release buckles that I've sewn in so that that's where basically those waist wings attach, the ones that sit lower down. Nice and easy to take on and off so that I can go from like being out in the convention with full aesthetics to sitting down comfortably in a pre-judging room. With merely days to go before I head to AVCon, I am going to be putting a bunch of last minute fabric feathers onto this corset and a little bit of airbrushing here and there just for some extra touches. One final test run all together, and guys, I am so relieved to have this all come together. Seriously, nobody made me choose a complex costume that's this big, but of course, we are not done. This has to survive a checked-in flight and a full day at a convention, so let's head to AVCon. And we are here in Adelaide, and the first thing I'm doing in my hotel room is getting things out of this big bike bag I use to transport things and see how it fared. Luckily, the smaller wings are definitely looking pretty good, not too banged up at all. The big shoulder wings were able to be folded in half for transport just to get it through there, and a little bit worse for wear, that's for sure. Considering how horrendous the baggage handlers can be, this is not too bad. Now, I've got this fiberglass rod that I can screw into one end here into that PVC pipe, and the other, with a bit of careful flexing, fits into this top part and holds everything really well once you get that Velcro over. Everything else definitely needed a good iron to straighten out, that's for sure. Now, AVCon runs on Saturday and Sunday, but we were there Friday because the pre-judging for the International Cosplay League happened on the Friday, or at least for one part of it. See, the International Cosplay League, or ICL, they have like two categories. You've got the singles singles and the duos, and the singles are based entirely on craftsmanship. There isn't really like a stage component, whereas the duos are based on a little bit of crafting and a little bit of the stage performance itself. There's like a skit. So that does mean that I'm judging for 3 days in a row, but at least on the Friday, we didn't really have to be in cosplay for it, so it was nice and casual, at least for us. The contestants all looked absolutely fantastic in their full getup, ready to go. And I was so honored to judge alongside Vicos and Vampri, two incredibly experienced heavy hitters in the cosplay competition world here in Australia. Seriously, these two have so many accolades, they made me feel like the personality higher by comparison. And I'll talk a little bit more about prejudging in just a bit. For now, let's skip ahead to Saturday morning and see how our costume fared. So far, so good. All right, no eye mesh today. I'm doing the contact lenses because I need to be able to take them out in a moment for judging. But yeah, good to go. They're calling me names. Big Bird died and went to heaven. Big Bird but diva.
Couture.
Big Bird but couture.
So I only just fit in the car. I'm right at the roof. And I called shotgun on the front seat because I'm in the giant ball gown.
Okay, wings on, booth set up. I am looking fabulous. I'm so glad I got this footage because while I was waiting for a photo shoot, I was pulling my wings in and accidentally snapped one of them. I pulled it too tight like this. It's not the fishing rod that snapped, it's literally the thread on the thing. So can I just take this second to shout out someone absolutely amazing in the Aussie cosplay community? This is Captain Patchets, whose whole thing is helping people repair their cosplays at conventions, and pretty much everything here he does voluntarily with the team as well. Seriously, I can't overstate this. The amount of like support and positivity that these guys give to the Australian community is just huge. So yeah, you guys are awesome. Just be prepared to have googly eyes everywhere if you leave your booth unattended. Or your face. Anywho, I kept my top wings on just long enough to get a couple of good photos, and then they are going behind my booth because this convention is already getting so popular.
Rachel, I can't carry a peace offering! The collection grows! Yeah!
There was only about 2.5 hours of free time at my booth before we got whisked away to lunch and prejudging, so I did get a chance to have a sneaky look at the artist alley that was already filling up.
Like I should be swapping some decks.
I found another angel! The first other heavenly Hazbin Hotel cosplayer I've seen in person.
Another donation to the Fragile team!
Now on this Saturday we were also judging, but we were judging the AVCon Masters, not ICL. But the prejudging process is pretty much the same. For cosplay competitions, prejudging usually involves a private room where contestants can walk in and us three judges are going to get up close and look at your costume while you talk us through how you've made it, what different techniques and skill you've used, and what the highlights are of the craftsmanship. Some people might find this a little intense, a little nerve-wracking. It can feel very intimate because of course we are getting up close and personal with the clothes that you are currently wearing. I didn't get the chance to ask consent from any of the contestants ahead of time, and it's not something I wanted to spring on anyone last minute. So instead, I'm going to be my own guinea pig and kind of show you a little bit about what might happen in a prejudging room. Ignoring my deflated skirt, I'd already taken the hoop skirt off for prejudging for this part. Generally speaking though, you would walk into a private room, say a quick hi to the judges, and they often will take some photos, just basically for reference later on when they're deliberating. And of course, take all this with a grain of salt. Every single competition, prejudging is going to look a little bit different for. Some competitions don't have it at all. I've been in competitions that only gave you 1 or 2 minutes to talk about your costume, some that gave you 10. Either way, you've probably got a limited time, so it's best to use your time wisely and talk through like the best skills that you've shown on this costume, or things that might not necessarily be visible to the naked eye. It can be tempted to get into a story about how things went wrong, or talk about why you really like that character. Those things are very fun to talk about, but maybe to leave outside the judging room just so you can use your time to highlight all of your best features of your amazing cosplay. If you're really nervous about this part of the process, I do recommend like practicing in front of the mirror, or heck, if the competition allows it, bring in some cue cards. I've been in heaps of prejudging rooms both as a contestant and a judge, and I still like to practice my spiel in front of the mirror in the days beforehand. If you get a little tongue-tied in the prejudging room, don't worry about it too much. Often the judges can see the majority of your work because you're literally wearing it on your sleeves. And a lot of competitions will have contestants submit a build book, which is like a little resume that shows like a bunch of details of the cosplay. Often the parts that you can't necessarily see that still contribute, like undergarments, corsets, petticoats, that sort of thing. While this is going on, the judges are usually making mental notes about what you've done well or what could use some improvements. And if you want feedback on that, most conventions will have a way to do that either through the convention directly or by messaging the judges. Just make sure you check the rules first. I'm finding myself a little self-conscious as I'm editing this, so I guess just like a note that as a cosplayer with my experience, I'm conscious of the fact that this is by far not my neatest or best work. It was never intended to be a competition piece or seen up close. I'm happy with it exactly as it is when you see it in its entirety, you know? I am nothing if not a cosplayer of extremes. I can do feral crafting or I can do intricate work. This was not the latter. Backstage, we got to watch the skits and the other cosplay competitions before it was time to see our wonderful Masters level competitors strutting their stuff on stage and showing off their work. AVCon's got a ton of competitions. This was the skit, beginner, intermediate, and masters happening. So there are loads of different options if you don't feel like you want to tackle something like ICL. Huge congrats to all of our winners and places in those categories. But for me at this point was ready to get back to the hotel, do a quick change, and get ready for After Dark.
It is time for the quickest cosplay change I have ever done because it is time for AVCon After Dark, which means I am going to be Sexy Shrek.
What are you doing in my swamp?
And guys, I need to talk about After Dark. After Dark, as the name suggests, is the 18+ event of AVCon. After Dark was so well done, I had a great time. For starters, everything about the event felt very, very safe. Mad props to the idea of having a QR code on the wristband to report any incidences pretty much instantly to make sure that everyone was feeling safe and able to communicate. I joined in on the catwalk just for fun, but the highlight for me were definitely all of these amazing acts. From aerial hoops with angel dust, a Waluigi pole dancing. I never would have expected an act themed around Donkey Kong 64. That was amazing. I might have been just a little bit biased towards the acts involving fire. And of course, our hosts were just fantastic. The next day was Sunday, and I will admit, I was feeling quite rough this day. I didn't sleep well the night before. I had like an ever-increasing headache, but all of that was mostly just due to me overcommitting to things. But I was still really enjoying like collecting the ribbons. I was part of a panel with some of my fellow judges. But of course, the stage show was ICL this time. This was where we get to see all of the International Cosplay League contestants on stage strutting their stuff, and for the skit competitors, we get to see what amazing performance they've put together. This was a really hard one to choose a winner for, both for the duos and the singles. There was just some absolutely incredible costuming work and some amazing performances from all of our skit people. Skit people to contestants, that feels a bit more professional. A huge shout out to Sezu, Shiitake Cosplay, and Bond Unlocked Cosplay. I am so excited for you guys and I cannot wait to see how you go at finals. So conclusion time. AVCon was of course absolutely fantastic. There were like some minor teething problems in terms of organization and communication. That's to be expected. AVCon has exploded in size and popularity in recent years, and this is the first time ever running the ICL preliminaries. Preliminaries. Obviously, as a guest, I can't give you an unbiased opinion. Seeing the love and passion that these guys are putting into the community and the event and their enthusiasm to keep improving leaves me no doubt that this is only going to get even better from here. So I am genuinely encouraging people to go along to AVCon to enter ICL or enter competitions at your local convention. In terms of the cosplay, Speaker looks incredible. I am so happy with it. Did I master the art of making an impractical cosplay practical? Not entirely, but it's a good start, right? It's a learning experience and I enjoyed figuring some stuff out. Thank you guys so much for watching, and an extra special thank you to my ultimate supporters. These are my top people on Patreon. Artemis, Michael, Mohican Creates, Maragu, Mixrandvi, Residual Images, and Robert Mischief, Toby, Vera Lynn, and Yuri. And shout out to these other amazing Patreon supporters who are on screen now. Hey, if you like my work and want to see more overly ambitious, ridiculous projects like this one, you should join my Patreon too. I post previews, work in progress, sometimes entirely exclusive mini videos. Sometimes I do polls and let you guys influence my next projects. Once in a blue moon, I've even done giveaways like these neon demon horns. The link to my Patreon is down in the description, but even by being here, liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing, all of that good stuff that keep the YouTube robots happy, you guys are supporting me. So thank you again so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!